Thank you so much, everyone, for joining our webinar. Our session today is in both English and Burmese. If you would like to listen in Burmese, please feel free to click the interpretation below. And
so I can go over interpretation, yeah. အားလုံးပဲမင်္ဂလာပါရှင်ကျေးဇူးအများကြီးတင်ပါတယ်ကျမတို့ ਨੇ ဒီနေ့ဝင်ရောက်ဆွေးနွေးပေးတဲ့အတွက်မြန်မာလိုနားထောင်လို့သူများအတွက်ကျမတို့ပြောပြချင်တာလေးကတော့ interpretation button အောက်ကဟာလေးကိုနှိပ်ပြီးတော့မြန်မာ Burmese option ကိုရွေးချယ်ပြီးတော့နားထောင်လို့ရပါတယ်ရှင်ကျေးဇူးပါ
My name is Saijai. I'm from Myanmar Witness, and today I'm really excited to have conversation about mental resilience with Sayama Panu. And today we have people from Myanmar and people from different parts of the world that are working on Myanmar issue or human rights issue joining us today. Our conversation will be about mental health resilience and how to support activists and journalists that working in this space, which is challenging space of technology and human rights, and how could we maintain our mental health in this space. So I'm really excited today to introduce Sayama Panu to join us and give us some advice today in this conversation. So Sayama Panu is a clinical psychologist who have more than 8 years of experience working in this space. She is currently finishing her PhD study at University of Vermont and focus on mental health and trauma. Sayama is going to start her training and fellowship at Harvard Medical School next year. Congratulations, Sayama. And I'm really excited that you have been working with a lot of journalists and activists in the past. So today we would love to hear some advice on how to deal with this issue on trauma and vicarious trauma and also burnout when we are working in this space. So Sayama Panu, could you tell me a little bit about your journey? How do you become interested in this area of mental health?
Thank you, Saijai, for this wonderful introduction. I have become interested in mental health pretty much since I was young. So my father was arrested for his pro-democracy activism when I was 5. So he was a political prisoner for 5 years. And so growing up in that community of activists, I saw the experience of trauma and political violence since I was young. So I was really interested in pursuing a healthcare career and trying to help heal, these wounds of political violence. So moving forward 12 years ago, I was in medical school back home. I never finished it, but I got a scholarship to come to the US on an exchange program. And I came here, and since then, I've been studying in mental health and particularly focusing on trauma and resilience. So one important lesson I learned from my work is how important it is for us to take care of ourselves while we are taking care of others. This includes everyone working in the front line. This includes, therapists like me and journalists, human rights workers. When you see and hear about traumatic details daily without any breaks, your mental health will be significantly impacted. So how do you take care of yourself is very important. How about you, Saijai? I was so excited when you invited me for this talk, and and could you also share a little bit about yourself and why you were interested in this topic?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sayama Panu. So I grew up in the southern part of Thailand. It's the area that have a lot of conflict happen since I grew up. So there is a lot of bombs and some violence that happened in the deep south Thailand where I grew up, and have to witness that since I was young. And it has been something that I thinking a lot about human rights and human rights violation in the area. But fast forward, when I arrived in Myanmar, the past year has been really hard with the coup that happened, and not just the coup, before the coup, there's COVID, which is already hard, and then after COVID, there's a coup. So it's double wave that happened. Yeah. So it's been a really hard year, not just from me, but from my colleagues and a lot of my friends. And it has been the year that I get a chance to reflect on not only the work that I do, but also how to take care of myself and prioritize my own mental health. So yes, I've been thinking a lot about mental health issue lately, and that's how I.
I was noticing our common theme, or we both had the childhood kind of like experience of knowing violence and trauma. So, there is actually research showing that if you have personal connection to trauma and then you work in trauma, so you are at higher risk, because we are humans and we are going to be reminded of like things that happen to your family, to your loved ones. And, actually the risk of trauma is very high globally too, because childhood trauma can exist outside of Burma too, like, so wherever you grew up in, like, it's good to be aware of, like, if I had childhood trauma, I'm going to be more careful when I work in the field of trauma, when serving people at risk, either as journalists or, either as human rights workers. It's really important to become aware of that.
Yeah, no, thank you for mentioning that. I feel like it's really important because sometimes a lot of our work is focused outward, right? And we focus to take care of ourselves, that we also traumatized by working in this space. And thank you for bringing that up, Siamat Panu. So we have a lot of new people joining us. I just want to remind you that our session is in both English and Burmese. If you would like to listen to Burmese, you could click interpretation on the right below. Yeah. Sayama Panu, I think my first question related to this is that how could we differentiate normal stress and burnout? How do we know that, okay, this is really normal stress and this is burnout? So do you have any advice on how could we differentiate this?
That's a really great question, Sajai. I think the main difference is that for normal stress, there's sort of an end in sight, like getting there may be difficult, but there's like end in sight that you can get through. But burnout, on the other hand, is more like a cycle of this, extreme exhaustion, withdrawal. You're just completely, that's why burned out. You're not like yourself anymore. And you may also have like changes in your thoughts and core beliefs. Particularly, we seem to see a lot of guilt. Like I can't take breaks. I need to work. People have worse than me right now. So they have a lot of guilt, or they don't have any awareness. So like for burnout, people only really notice themselves or get help only when things are getting really bad. So that will be the main difference of like the chronic and circular nature of burnout, and the lack of awareness and these feelings of guilt, cynicism as well. Like nothing is gonna work. What's the point of seeking help? Other people are having it worse than me, and incompetence in your work too. So people who are really good at their job even might start to feel cynical, like I actually can't do it. This is too difficult, or that I'm not going to succeed. What's the point of trying? So they will have that kind of difficult thoughts, which affect your sense of self and confidence. And so it's harder to recover if you notice it very late.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm really struck by when you talk about guilt, because I think that is something that a lot of my friends and colleagues talk a lot about. A lot of my friends that I talk to, they mention that they feel guilty that they are okay while their friends are going, might be in jail while working in this space, or they are feeling safe. Why their friend is going through suffering or being arrested by the military. So yeah, can you talk more a bit about like how could we deal with this feeling of guilt, why we are okay, but like a lot of our colleagues and friends are suffering?
Absolutely. So that is so common, Saijai. And I think, a lot of Burmese individuals, whether they're within the country or living abroad, they struggle with, particularly this is called survivor's guilt. Like I'm still living, I'm still surviving, but my community or my loved ones didn't even have a chance to fight for their lives, right? Like, so they will feel guilty even for their day-to-day life. So, eating and sleeping, and while I'm not sleeping amid, bombs and gunshots, and why is that okay? So I think in that moment, a really important thing to remember is who has to take accountability here. Like you did not wish for this, you did not wish for violence, so perpetrators need to take accountability is really important, right? Like, so I think realistically reminding yourself that I did not choose for my friends to be harmed. I did not wish for that at all. And, life is complicated. Sometimes some of us get lucky and in safer places. But at the end of the day, when violence happens, perpetrators need to be, are the ones to blame. You are not to blame, right? So that's something to be reminded of in dealing with survivor's guilt, one. And two is there is a strategy of using your survivor's guilt as like fuel towards something that you really care about. So you can't really end the violence right now. We want to, we can't yet. So we're doing everything possible through the people's movement, so everyone attending right now, you all play such an important role in making a difference for our movement. So when survivor guilt hits you, trying to remind yourself that good things take time. It will take time, but I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best to, reduce all of the suffering. But I'm only human. And at the end of the day, who is to blame here, right? Like,
Yeah, thank you so much, Yama Panu, for talking a bit about survival guilt. I think that's something that, it's been on my mind for a while, and like how to deal with that. And it's quite comforting to know that a lot of people share that, right? Like when I talk to my friend, that's the feeling of guilt come quite a lot when we feeling like we are safe here in this environment, but a lot of our friends are suffering.
Right.
The other topic that came into my mind is also about vicarious trauma. We talk about the difference between normal stress and burnout, but after the burnout, I remember in our conversation, you talk a bit about vicarious trauma. So can you share a bit more about what are the difference between that and how to prevent that?
Yes, vicarious trauma is type of trauma that we are impacted by either witnessing or listening to details of somebody else's trauma. So, like post-trauma reactions like PTSD or mental health reactions are most commonly seen in the direct people who have directly experienced trauma. But sometimes if you are professionals working in the field, let's say you are a journalist daily watching these horrifying images and writing reports of how many people have been killed. And so you are also going to be impacted by trauma. So that's what we call by vicarious trauma. And Saida, if possible, I'd love to actually share a screen.
Please do.
Be okay, like just to show
Yes.
like common reactions. Can you see this okay?
Yes, I think we can see that perfectly.
Okay, I'll come back to burnout symptoms again, but while we're talking about vicarious trauma, as you can see here, it's just so many reactions that is a warning sign of vicarious trauma. I won't go over all of this, but some of the most common things that affect you the most is something that a sense that one can never do enough because so much suffering and tragedies are happening, and so you feel the sense that I cannot sleep, I should not sleep, I should do more and more and more, and it has not worked yet. So you feel that you are not enough, you are not worthy of rest, you need to keep working. And then minimizing is another response. Minimizing meaning like minimizing your own pain. Let's say you are starting to have nightmares, right? Like a lot of journalists I've worked with have common nightmares of like the stories that they have reported, they have written, because they process those stories in detail, so they will have nightmares about them. But then like the next day they won't seek help because they might feel that this is nothing compared to someone who lost their loved one. Why like my suffering is nothing. So they might minimize that. And sometimes they might also minimize other people's stories of like, for example, human rights workers, you're trying to help one family and, or like each family stories are so tragic and so difficult. So it's actually good to feel something, right? Like because we are humans and then accept your emotions, you're sad or you're affected by them. But sometimes you might minimize these difficulties by saying, I don't care at this point anymore. Like, which is so unlike you, like that's when it becomes really scary. Wow, I can't even feel that sadness or compassion or empathy, right? Like, so that's another common thing. And dissociative moments, dissociative meaning or dissociation meaning that, although you're awake and walking, you feel like your mind is somewhere else. So sometimes it might feel like you're re-seeing images, rehearing things that you heard about. So all of these are pretty scary, and like, so just to be aware of, this is all normal. If you're experiencing this, it's very treatable, very common. And people also use avoidance strategies like addictions, like instead of seeking help, they might just use substances more, alcohol more. So all of that becomes a cycle of your mental health being affected more and more.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Siyama Panu, for mentioning this. I remember in our earlier conversation, you mentioned it's really important to create self-awareness, to know that this is happening in your body and the feeling this is happening for you. So do you have any tip for, we have a lot of journalists here in our attendees and also people who work in this space. How could we develop that awareness and to realize that this is happening in your body?
Absolutely. So I have prepared for that too, Sajai. So going back to here, to identify or to recognize burnout in yourself. So I'm kind of putting activists and journalists all together because you're on the front line, you're serving the people, serving the community. And so most common signs and symptoms would be like feelings of exhaustion. So, there is normal tiredness or normal stress that we all feel after maybe like, good night of sleep, you feel a little bit better. But this type of burnout is complete collapse. You are just sustained overwork. You have not had breaks maybe for 2 years, some of our journalist peers at this point, so you just think about work all day, all night. So there's feelings of exhaustion. And emotional burdens of activism. So emotional burdens meaning if you do anything not related to activism, you blame yourself, you are hurt on yourself, you're like just spending time with your kids maybe, or talking to your partner and laughing a little, and you're suddenly, oh my god, I'm not doing my work. Sometimes you might feel that way because you're burned out, and that means that you're not remembering what joy feels like, what connection feels like, because you've been all, focusing on work so much that anytime you experience a little bit of pleasure and joy, you felt this emotional burdens of, wow, shameful for myself. How am I not doing my work? I need to get back to my work, right? Like, so, and that's related to guilt about taking time for self-care. You don't do things you used to do for yourself anymore. And this is important. The last point is the perception that one's work is not paying off. Something like our revolution, it will take time, right? Like it will take time to see major changes. So it's really hard to honor and appreciate any little progress that's happening right now because of you. So people forget about that. Like you're working all day and night, but not like the tragedies continue. You're hearing more news of sad, families and villages being burned, and like at some point you're gonna be scared to even open your laptop. What's gonna be another news I'm gonna have to interview or report, or so at that point you're feeling like, what am I doing? This is not paying off. So that would be like psychological signs and symptoms. Burnout can be so severe sometimes that it can manifest in physical symptoms as well. So most common one is sleeplessness. So all of these thoughts about work and thinking about work is not done at night. You're on your bed, thinking about it, still looking at the phone or ruminating. I did not do enough. I did not do enough. Oh my God, I just remember 3 other deadlines, And a lot of journalists I work with, as I mentioned earlier, have nightmares. Nightmares can be so impacting. It's, it really affects your quality of sleep. And that will lead to like frequent illness because sleep is so important for us, right? Like, so if you're not getting enough sleep, you're gonna develop more impacting symptoms like migraines, headaches. I was recently working with one of the amazing woman activists, and she has this horrible headache, like she can't like even read anymore. And I was trying to do assessment, and she has only slept like 3-4 hours a night, and she's developing severe migraines. And like, so we had to, prescribe her medications, we had to do therapy, and now she's just so much better. Like she's sleeping better, she's able to do her work more, but like physical, your body will kind of like tell you like, we need to rest, and then lack of interest, apathy. So another thing is uncontrollable emotional outbursts, meaning like, even really patient individuals might notice themselves that I'm losing anger easily. I'm having a little bit of conflicts with my loved ones easily. I recently saw a couple for therapy, and both are, both are activists, and sort of like doing CDM, right? Like, so they were kind of talking about how their marriage has been so difficult since the coup, and like, it all makes sense because like with trauma, you forget all the good things happening in your
Yeah.
life, in your relationship. So if you notice that while I'm easily angry, I'm easily having outbursts, might be a sign of burnout. And depression, forgetfulness, irritability, all of these might be a signs for you to kind of notice that, okay, like what is going on? I'm not like myself right now.
Great. So thank you, Sayama Panu, for sharing all these symptoms of like sleeplessness, forgetful, feeling angry easily. So if we have a friend, or if we notice that our friend going through these symptoms that you mentioned, right? What would be your advice in supporting a friend? I feel like a lot of participants here must have a friend that going through this process. And as a friend, you wonder, how could we support them? Do you have any advice for that?
That's a great question, Saija. Thank you for that, because social support is the most important like solution for healing burnout or managing burnout. So if you're noticing your friend or colleague who might be experiencing burnout, let them. So I'll kind of share like 4 strategies like that I comment share. The first point is let them know that you're there for them. They are not alone. If their friend, if you notice someone you love is like really different these days, struggling, it's better to reach out sooner than later. Reach out to them, let them know, sort of like in the place of like, things are so difficult right now in our community. Like we are all struggling. So I just wanted to hear how you're doing. So be gently checking in. So so that you're opening the door. And most likely if you approach with that way, instead of saying like, oh my god, you're so angry these days, what's going on, like that, it will not work. But if you're like saying, okay, things are so difficult, I feel it, I imagine you're feeling it, things are tough right now, how are you feeling? So most likely they might open up, and at that stage it's really important to listen without judgment and validate their feelings, right? They may
Validate feeling. Okay.
validate
Can you
their
talk more
feelings.
about that? How to validate that feeling?
So important, right? Like, because so one, listening without judgment, and then so let's say like your friend is telling about, I feel so angry at myself, at my boss, at whatever, my wife, nothing is working. And one thing you can say is like, I have felt that too, actually, since the coup began. All that you can say that I've actually went to this one webinar. The psychologist was telling it's to be expected. These reactions are so common if we are exposed to trauma daily. I heard that it's very, it's a common reaction. So what it like validating, what it does is making people feel understood and feel less alone. That okay, maybe it's okay that I'm angry after working 20 hours of listening to people horror stories, and I can't do anything to fix it, and I'm sad and I'm angry. So kind of like validating, meaning I'm here for you, I have felt that way too, of course I feel angry,
Great.
that's important.
Um,
And then third strategy, you want to ask them to how you can help. How you can help, as it can be as simple as, if you have energy and capacity, yeah, you could offer as something as simple as dropping them food, or like offering to watch their kids, for a few hours, or maybe, just to help them like hang out for one Friday afternoon, eating together, going for walks, and so they are reminded of that. I have people who care about me. Like work is right now, it feels like everything is very, very important, but work is not everything in my life, So that's really important. And finally, at the end of this, our talk, I will share professional resources. So please guide them towards professional, mental health professionals and resources as well. Start by showing up as their friend, but also, like validating that even 1 or 2 therapy sessions can be so helpful. Or like if you're not sleeping for like 2 months now, maybe getting prescription short term, right? Just to get sleep again might be helpful. So those would be 4 main strategies.
Yeah, thank you so much. We talk a bit about how the friend could help, but the other question I also have is, how could we ask for help, right? Because we based on the assumption that our friends might notice that we have some burnout and they will come and help. But do you have any advice, or how could we ask for help? Because I feel like in our work, we often focus on helping others, and we're not really good at asking for help. So what would be your suggestion and advice for asking for help when we need it, and when we feel like we experience all these symptoms that you went through?
That's a beautiful question, Saija. It's so true. Sometimes, that's why we do this kind of like awareness, like kind of talks. Even if your friends are worried about you, sometimes they might not know how to ask, so they don't ask. And but you need help, and like it's important for you to reach out to if when you need help. So, excuse me. So when you're experiencing burnout, Saija, you really want to ask help in all areas of your life, at work, at home, with your friends, with your peers at work, and from your boss. So, I agree with you that people hesitate to ask for help because you are the helper. So you're the journalist, you're the human rights actors, and it feels unfair. I was like, what does it mean I need help? Or there might be shame and stigma that, especially among men, like research show that they don't admit about their struggles because it feels like, doesn't mean I'm weak. No, right? Like it doesn't not mean you're, that means you are human, like actually human with, feelings. It's good to feel and like good to ask for help. So, there might be strategies to ask because it can be sometimes helpful to begin by acknowledging that this is hard for you, like, so for example, you might set up an appointment with your boss or a colleague, and, you might start by saying that, I wouldn't bring this up if I didn't feel it was important. Or like, I'm not used to asking for help, so this is really difficult for me, but can I just share with you about something? So that opens up doors for your boss or your colleagues to have more empathy or like more attuned to what you say. Right? And you want to be also specific about what you are sort of struggling about. So instead of just saying, I'm so stressed, I need help, like which is a good step, first step, but after that, you want to be more clear. How do you put clarity? By including specifics like, I'm just feeling overwhelmed by the volume of projects on my plate these days. Or I'm feeling just really anxious about meeting all of these important deadlines all coming up next month, but as you know, they have never really bothered me before, but like now I feel so overwhelmed. So that way there's a possibility of solution if you channel where is the place that your work could help you with, your peers could help you with. And then so you could maybe imagine asking for extension possibly, or like maybe at home you're telling your wife that I am so overwhelmed at work, like, I hope you can show up a little bit more for me, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
So be specific with your request is
yeah,
like
yeah. I like what you mentioned about being specific about what you request, because sometimes I feel like I fall into that category. I just say to my friend that I'm stressed,
yeah.
and yeah. If for the participant, if you have any question, please feel free to put your question on the Q&A box, and then we will ask Siyama Panu. So I have one question coming in, Siyama, which is related to what we are discussing right now. The question is, sometimes people are in denial to accept that they are mentally exhausted or feeling burnout. How can we best advise them that they should seek support, or how can, I think that's the question. How can we best advise them that they need to seek support when they are in denial?
Yes, that's a great point. If they're in denial, it's also a part of like burnout, which is gonna be very common, that I don't need it, I can do this. But like one thing you could share as a friend is to share that you are so important to us, to our community, to our work. We will need you long term, like so we can't kind of like I'm if you're close enough, you could kind of say that I'm just worried about how many nights now that you have not slept, like I'm really kind of worried about your health. And so like, can you take some breaks? And I'm here for you. Like, can you like, imagine what can we do? And I really highlighted, people don't typically take breaks because they also overestimate the time it needs to take breaks. Typically daily, I would say you just really need good quality half an hour break. 1 hour would be great, but like if you're so busy, like, so as an example, I am we were talking about earlier, I've been affected by burnout myself. I work 60 hours and a week right now. Many of them are here trauma details, and so I am being also affected. But what I do is on my Google Calendar, it's from 6 to 6:30, sometimes 7 if I have time. I have like self-care exclamation. I have to do self-care. I don't care what's going on. Like I don't book anything. I don't do anything at that time, right? So during the time, you want to really give yourself a break by, doing something entirely unrelated to your work. Like I dance, so I go to dance classes, I go to yoga classes, I would talk to a friend and maybe cry. so by being able to release that,
Yeah.
is one example. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I really struck by when you mentioned that, because one really good advice that I received from my mentor,
Yeah.
he mentioned that it's really important for you to have like family and career and everything, but one really important thing is to have one thing just for yourself, right?
Yeah.
Apart from like career and family. And so that one thing for yourself could be, as you mentioned, could be dancing. That could be one thing for yourself. Or it could be, swimming. It could be singing. So it's important to have that one thing just for yourself, apart from career and family.
Absolutely. And I would say that self-care is important for our revolution to succeed. We will need all of you here to continue, investing in, working for our people in the best way that you can. And so, we always say, right, you can't share from an empty cup. Right, like, so your cup needs to be full. So how do you refill your cup? It will be different for all of you. I love meditation and mindfulness too. So at night, when I'm done, I have to put away my phone and then start to do meditation. I easily fall asleep, right? Like, so, or some people might like cooking. While you're cooking, you're not going to be listening to news. So you're going to be doing, like talking to your friends or like listening to music. Do anything that gives you pleasure. But, that's what I mean. My people overestimate most people I worked with, they're like, I can't take breaks. And then so I would look at their schedule together. I was like, okay, let me look at your calendar. I understand. I was like, I work 60 hours. I understand. Let me look at your calendar. And then there will be always at least half an hour, 1 hour somewhere that you can do. But you know what they're doing with those time? Probably on Facebook or probably like on phone. Not blaming that, is very normal, but like you are using those time for draining yourself further, where you could have used for something more healthy, right?
Yeah. So the other question I have is also related to the use of social media, right? So one advice that I hear a lot in this space is that please limit the use of social media for better mental health. But people like us who work in open source investigation, or journalists who have to be on Twitter all the time and looking at the news, what would be your advice that to deal with this social media? Why we have to work on it, and we have to, in our work, we have to deal with it regularly. So what would be your suggestion on that?
Yeah. Saja, thanks for sharing that. That's such a good point, right? Like when mental health professionals share the advice, they might miss that you can't like miss social media. You can't limit your work is on social media, right? So that would be hard, but like you can be more strategic though. You can still put intentional breaks still. So let's say you have 8 hours of work tomorrow, right? That to do on social media. Can you put a reminder on your phone to do something different every hour or two to give your mind a break? That might be like, maybe getting fresh air briefly, just walking away from computer briefly, sometimes as simple as like, I will in a little bit, let's demonstrate a relaxation activity too. So like maybe you go to bathroom and just do some deep breathing, relaxation exercise that gives a break for your nervous system, so that your nervous system, one example I give is like, our mind is kind of like pressure cooker, right? It's shaking and shaking, it's more pressure. Before it bursts out, you gotta relieve some pressure. And how do you relieve that pressure can be very strategic, right? Like, so throughout the day, that whole 8 hours, can you take any breaks at all? Like maybe sometime, maybe even different types of work, so that your mind is not entirely drained by one heavy work, but instead one heavy work, one easier work, one meaningful and rewarding work. And so like you are still working on social media, but you are strategic, right? And also another thing is, earlier I was saying, Saijai, like what typically tends to happen with activists and journalists and people who work with social media is, even when you're done with work, you're still on phone and social media though, like typically maybe sometimes that's for personal communication, but sometimes what I've noticed is people might be still reading more upsetting news or people's reactions to your work. So in this moment, you just work the whole 8 or 10 hours, right? Like, and then you come home and you're on your bed looking at the phone 1 more hour. So, so those are the way what we mean by limiting boundaries, as saying, okay, if you notice that that's something you would do, at least you can do psychological boundary. Like you might be tempted to check, and like you might have work, like you have come home, but you just notice that, oh my God, I forgot one thing. if it can wait, can you wait until tomorrow? And like just put the phone physically away. So that's the best strategy. Like at nighttime, what you consume will affect your mental health a lot. So like really putting your phone away physically as you sleep would be like one way to really limit during your free time to have the quality time.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, Yama Panu. One last question I have before we gonna open for questions, because there's some question coming in, is that as an organization and as an organization leader, how could we support our staff in dealing with this issue? Do you have any advice or suggestion on that?
Absolutely. That's a great question too. And I will start with talking about organization level. After this, Sajai, let's also talk a little about what can individuals do themselves to for day to day. Yeah, organization will be, so much that they can do and that they need to do. One, they need to check in with staff and colleagues to create a culture of like support and openness, create it as like a sort of regular conversations, acknowledging that it's been 2 years of experiencing political violence. Of course, we are all experiencing burnout, just normalize that, experiencing difficult emotions at this point, difficult, like maybe exhaustion at this point, but can we support each other in this team? Like, can we listen to each other in this team? So trying to create that support and openness. And I think organizations leaders really need to also prioritize mental health resources. So use some of their funding to provide free professional support for mental health. Especially in Myanmar, it's not too expensive for quality master level therapists to come to your organization and to meet with your journalist or to meet with your human rights worker. So later I'll share again the list of organizations so you can contact professional support, right? Like, and third, sometimes like individual therapy might be difficult, especially for Myanmar people. We don't really do therapy, right? It's suddenly kind of like a little bit better than before, thankfully, but people have a lot of stigma for therapy. So sometimes it might be also helpful to have like group therapy or like group support space, right? Like, so it would be mental health support groups. You can also call them as like listening sessions meaning the supervisor or the organization leaders are sitting in, or maybe sometimes they don't sit in, like you will do both. You will have to do both. Like sitting in is helpful because like you have to directly hear what the people are struggling with, what they need help with. But sometimes you should not be there so that people can also openly share about their complaints and their, difficulties with therapists, right? So that kind of group therapy, I found that it can be very effective because people feel less alone. That you come to this like maybe Zoom group support and Zoom support group or some sort of support meeting, and you feel like, oh, I'm not alone feeling this way, and there is support.
Yep.
And finally, yes,
sorry, go ahead.
finally, like the last thing I was gonna just say is so investing in sort of like connecting with mental health like clinicians and organizations, because there are a lot of clinicians out there. Some of them I see actually on our team right now, like Siama Diana, who is I just want to give her a shout out. She is an amazing Kachin Burmese therapist who is helping to heal psychological trauma for years now, right? So someone like her has been volunteering for hours and hours like each week, so I would say that if your organization has money, like invest in clinicians, invest in organizations. We have experts, but who will be able to work more, if they get funds. So yeah.
That's great. Siama Panu, we have another question on the Q&A. Do you see that? Yeah, if you can help answer that question.
Q&A. Hold on. Oh, I just see them now. Okay.
It's in Burmese. Yeah, if you can help with that question would be great.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for finding that out to me. So the Burmese question say that sometimes like there's your mind may have this thought that like you can do more than you want to do more than what you can, right? Like so that makes me feel really exhausted. How can you get through that, right? Like so thank you for asking that, Siya So or Siama So. That's really kind of related to burnout that we were talking about, right? Like, so our mind will kind of feel kind of also overestimate that what we can do. So, like I think including myself, I'm telling that 60 hours a week is way too much. I need to cut it down. So I am going to cut it down. Like, so sometimes you feel that because so many things are happening, everything is so important. Your mind feels that you have to do a lot to be able to get through, but that's not true. You have to do quality work, and but without committing to too many hours so that you don't get burned out. So I'm going to share a little bit more about maybe intentionally putting self-care plans. So since we're talking about mental resilience, Sajai, related to this question, can I share a little bit about my screenshot? I think this will be related to the other question too, like, the anonymous attendee asked, like victim mindset. So I want to quickly share the screen again to share coping tips. So when you're feeling either exhausted or feeling any sort of emotion that you all share, the victim mindset, kind of recognizing that it's normal. I'm experiencing burnout right now. That's why I have these thoughts, right? Like I'm experiencing vicarious trauma. That's why I have these thoughts. And so this is called like ABC model. So if you're struggling with any of these mental health challenges, the first step is we want to be aware of your own needs and limits and emotions and resources. So this is different for all of us, right? So sometimes some of you may actually really have a lot of all existing resources already. Someone who like, can meditate regularly already. So maybe you rely on that more, so you want to be aware of like, what are my limitations and where are my resources? That's the first step. So, and then balance of work and play and taking care of yourself and others. So B stands for balance. That balance is really important. That will help you to fight for both fighting the thoughts of being a victim as well as like being not enough, like, because you need to recharge yourself with the times of the play as well as with work. And while taking care of others, you need to take care of yourself. So that balance will help you to, we call this like psychological flexibility. Psychological flexibility meaning you want to be adaptive to the times of need. You want to be balanced in in what you need. Right. And finally, C is connection to yourself, others, and something larger. So meaning like, work is like means everything to me, but at the same time, there's so many people out there doing, their best. I'm not the only one, right? Like in this space, as journalists, in this space as activists, our community is very strong. I need to be reminded of that. So you want to connect, with people via social media. So although I'm located in the US, one of my self-care strategies, I talk with my Burmese sisters pretty regularly. We just like talk for like 1 hour and share about our struggles. And that makes me remember that there's something bigger than myself, meaning something larger than myself, meaning this can be our revolution. I restore the faith again that we are going to succeed one day. It may take time. We are going to succeed. How can we know we are so dedicated? It may take time, but we're so dedicated. That kind of thoughts you want to feel, right? Like, and I know really quickly, I wanted to talk about resilience practices. Is that okay, Saijai, for like a couple of minutes?
Please share
Okay.
that.
For the time, I just wanted to check in. So thinking about resilience, this is my research area. And so I just wanted to also share this with you all. So building resilience is something in psychology, we call resilience as like ordinary magic. Ordinary magic meaning anyone can develop, anyone can learn to be resilient, right? Like, so common misconception can be like, oh, I'm not resilient like my parents, I'm not resilient like this person, that person, I'm weak or like I'm not strong, but resilience is something you all can develop, but it will take practice. So especially in this area of combating vicarious trauma or burnout, there are 8 areas that you can really work on, really replenishing your body. So physical exercise is so helpful. It can be like a walk or like 15 minutes of, earlier I was saying yoga is so helpful. Yoga, dance, walks, or sometimes even like while you're cooking, you're just walking in the kitchen. That's okay too. Like physical exercise and sleep. It's so important to get 8 hours of sleep, minimum 7, right? Like really making sure you get back to that. And then mindfulness, as we talk about, everyone know how important that is, because mindfulness gives you time and the ability to choose differently. When you're mindful, okay, I can choose different today, right? And then reprisal, meaning like the ability to see things differently from different angle. So let's say you're being like too difficult on yourself, you're blaming yourself. If you're able to see this differently, would I ever blame that way to my friend who is doing their best? And would I ever blame that person? No, I would not talk that way to my friend. Why am I being so hard on myself? I need to be kinder, right? And so, and anytime if there's good things happening, like earlier we're talking about survivor's guilt. After coping with a survivor's guilt, with the strategies I talked about, it's important to savor any little good moments. You know, like any little good moments, like even eating something delicious your wife made for you, you know, like, or like you're feeling the fresh air on your skin, really savor. This is the experience of being alive. I have a lot of sadness, I have a lot of struggles, I have a lot of good things too. Still, even amid all of the struggle, I still have some good things, right? And then really important to find still moments of gratitude, because moments of gratitude meaning, you know, even at work, if you can express gratitude to yourself or to your peers, as well as any good things happening in your life, you can notice that, okay, today there are 3 good things that happen. I'm grateful for those moments. And finally, we talked about social connections, how important it is. Please reach out for help, please offer help, and, you know, knowing that burnout can be managed, but we will need social support. And that's related to contact. Please contact mental health professional. So if you look at this, each things don't take time, right? Like this thing is something you can take 1 or 2 minutes. Gratitude, reprisal, emotional savoring, you can do anytime. And mindfulness, whenever you remember, you can try this. And like, if you boost on exercise and sleep and build social connections, it will make a major difference. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sayama Panu. I learned so much from your slide and like what you just sharing recently. The other question that we have is about funding toward mental health. So the question is that how can we convince donors that mental health for activists is the reflection of sustainability of the work we are doing, so that they can be more fund allocated for mental health?
Yes.
So basically the question is, how could we make sure that donor understand the necessary of providing funding for mental health? In my own experience, to answer this question as like people working in this space, I feel that it's very important to educate the donor for them to understand that mental health is not just the add-on to the program, right? It's not, this is the main work that we do and just add on mental health support, but it's actually the integral part of the program. Like we won't be able to do the work we do without having thinking about mental health for our staff. So I think the key answer is making sure and try to educate donors about the importance of mental health. And second, I feel like if the donor that you're working with is not understand that this is a critical part of your work, I feel like they might not be the right fit to work together as a donor in this project, right? So yes, I think that would be my 2 cents of how to engage the donor.
Yeah, that's
If you
great.
have any suggestion for this question.
One last thing I would add to all that's great, you know, like in terms of like educating, there are a lot of research findings out there, especially amid humanitarian crisis like what we are facing, in the context of political violence, how important it is to prioritize mental health, right? Like so to make this work sustainable, because we are going to lose our journalists for like health reasons, you know, like so it's practical and smart to invest in mental health, right? Like, so you can back that by scientific research. There are a ton out there.
I think that's a great point. Provide them with data on this.
Yeah. Sajai, I was going back to one of the questions that one of the anonymous attendee asked earlier. I was quickly going over the victim mindset, but you know, thank you so much for sharing. But there were more things that's really important, I think, for us to talk about. Is that okay? To go back to that?
Please. Yes, please. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I am going back to this question that someone asked anonymously. So they said that, you know, sometimes it's so true. Like, you know, you might be scared of everyone you work with or people in your life may think that you're victimizing yourself when you talk about your vicarious trauma or your mental health, you know, especially all after speaking to victims of torture, and like your sources get arrested or disappear, right? Like and thank you for sharing about your story. You were talking, they were talking about victim mindset is something I'm always terrified to have, but growing up, I had that due to losing my father at 19. So I've been aware of it. I've tried to be aware of my pattern. So I really applaud you to highlighting the self-awareness. That's, we always say in like psychology that the first step to healing is awareness. As long as we are aware of our own patterns, like you open up so many doors for the possibilities of healing. So I just want to acknowledge and honor this anonymous attendee for sharing that. Yes, it's so real though. Sometimes people, you worried about what if people don't take you seriously when you open up, then they are not there your people, like you open up and what if they judge you, and I hope that's not true. Hoping that our community, like especially in this time, my experiences, if they are your good friends, they will be really glad if they reach out to you, sharing about your trauma, if they are your good friends. And if they didn't take it well, moving on. Okay, like this is not the person right now, right? Like, so I just love that this person, how you name that, I'm aware of that, of my own patterns, right? Like, so but it's since the coup and working full time, this is something, of course, you're dealing with constantly. And there's also real danger of like people you work with, like your sources are getting arrested, getting tortured, right? So your work does impact, like safety of other people. And so in those moments, it looks like, you might beat yourself up, or like, might be re-trigger for our past trauma. So I appreciate that Saija and I started by talking about our childhood trauma, because all of us have something from our, like, and that will get like, oh my God, so much re-trigger. Everything just get re-triggered, right? And during the coup, like, or like throughout the last 2 years, when you have been exposed to all of this trauma. So yeah, it makes everything you said makes sense. But at the same time, continuing to be aware of this is my pattern. I still deserve support. I believe that I deserve support, right? I will reach out to people, I reach out to my team, and I will seek professional support, right? Like, so all of those strategies I would recommend.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much, Sayama Panu. This has been a wonderful session connecting with you in this space. And there are some resources on mental health that you would like to share, right? We would be happy to send the email back to all the participants who sign up for the session. But is there anything you would like to share here, or
Yes.
the link? Yeah, please do.
So I will, send to audience some mental health resources, as well as I'll show like some screen share so that you can look at what it looks like. And there's also a like brochure or like tip sheet that we have created in both English and in Burmese exactly on this topic. So if you know someone who could use like this topic, later you can watch this webinar again, or you can also share the brochure. So I'll also share that with you all via email. So first, let me share the mental health resources. So it's called MHPSS Myanmar Mental Health and Psychosocial Support Myanmar Referral. So you can go to their website and look at their referral directory, right? Like in different areas of Myanmar. As an example, under Yangon, right? Like in different township. So I would say that this document is a little bit older, October 2022. So it's possible one or two that you contacted might not get back to you because they are not, working full time or like for whatever reason. So I would say please don't give up. Contact to a few. If someone doesn't get back to you, just know that they are busy. But like, these organizations are all excellent. Like, for example, I've worked with Seta Consultancy, Masusuma, Siama Susuma. She is doing so much mental health workshops and therapy. And there are also organizations like there's several actually free organizations that are providing support through social media. That would be the one good use of social media, I would say. If So I want to share about example organizations. There's so many organizations like this. So one is called Serenity Counseling Service. So one of my really good friend and colleague is leading this organization. So they have free support groups, like psychosocial support. They have like suicide prevention sharing circle. So I would say you can go to these groups, loving kindness meditation, right? You can go to those groups. Shame and guilt, this will be so good, right? For you all to go to. If you don't want to share your name, you don't have to. You can use initials, you can use fake names, you don't have to open your videos. I would really recommend checking these out. So maybe through Saija, I will collect a few of those. There's another one called Juju's Safe Space. Like Siama Juju is another Myanmar clinician. So she actually has a hotline now. You can message and let's see.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So a lot of
Siama,
resources. Yeah.
Siama Panu, thank you so much for all these wonderful resources. And I would be happy to share this with everybody who signed up for the seminar. We will combine all the resources and send it back to you with your email that you share.
That's
Yeah.
great.
So
Can I add one last thing of
please do.
Thank you so much. So thinking about our mental health struggles and experience of Myanmar journalists, so I'm currently leading a psychological research on Myanmar mental health project, and that project collects experience ask like our community members to share about their experiences or like mental health challenges. And it would be a really good opportunity to sort of like anonymously participate, but how that will help you is you get to reflect on your own mental health by getting into that. That's one. And two, we really need to have research like that in order to be able to develop more effective trauma treatments. We need your voices, right, to be able to adapt our treatments. And third, in Ukraine, for example, like similar sort of humanitarian crisis, they have a lot of psychological research going on. So what it does, it generates funding. Again, it goes back to you need data to ask for international trauma. We don't have research at all if you go into scientific literature. So this is a one small step, that I'm trying to do, and I really would like to invite you all. This is the link to get to that research link, and then maybe I'll also share this with you, Saita, in the email. And
sounds great.
And yeah, that would be really great if you all would be willing to participate, and you can also share with anyone.
Yeah, we would be happy to add that into the link and send it to everyone. I just want to give a big thank to my colleagues who helped organizing this workshop, and also Siama Panu for staying with us. It's really late in Boston right now where you are. Thank you so much for sharing. And I would like to thank all the participants who are joining us today from wherever you are. If there is anything that you take away from this seminar, it would be great if you can share one takeaway with your friend or colleague that you learned from this seminar. We would be very grateful. And before we end it today, if you can take 2 minutes to fill out the online survey about this talk today, it would be wonderful. So we could get the feedback from this session to see if it's useful, and we could produce something like this in the future again.
One last thing, I know we're running out of time, but for like 2 or 3 minutes, can we end with like maybe relaxation practice? Like
absolutely.
That would be nice way for everyone to move on with their day, as well as to remember how they can. So we don't need too much time. You can do this in your work bathroom, during lunch break, whatever, or like you just heard difficult news, So relaxation, Saija, you can maybe follow along with me.
I'm ready.
Okay, great. So we want to put one hand on your chest, one hand on your stomach, and then I invite all the audience to follow along as well. If you feel comfortable, please close your eyes and notice your 2 feet firmly planted on the ground. And relax your shoulders all the way down, away from your ears. And when you're ready, we're going to start breathing in. When we breathe in, we're going to breathe in all the way into your stomach. And when you're ready, slowly breathe out. Next time when you breathe in, you want to feel your hand on your stomach moving outward. So really making sure the air gets to your stomach. Let's breathe in again. Feeling the air filling up to your stomach, feeling it with the hand. And slowly breathe out. This time when you breathe in, again, really slowly deepening your inhale and think about what you need right now in this moment. What can you invite into your mind? And as you exhale, think about what you like to release, what you like to let go of. Continuing to relax our bodies, maybe relax your eyebrows and jaws, drop your tongue. Next time when you inhale, think about any good energy you like to feel, maybe inhaling hope, inhaling trust for yourself, inhaling positive energy, strength, resilience, love. And exhale all that you would like to release. Maybe exhale worries, tensions, stress, self-doubt and guilt and victim mindset that we all carry at times. Let's breathe in again with this fresh air coming into your nose, traveling through your lungs, noticing your body, feeling calmer and calmer. And allowing yourself to let go of everything that you don't need to carry. Tell yourself that I can let go of things. I can always restart my day. I will make time for myself. I deserve support. I deserve care. And my body deserves to be replenished. Let's do one last breath. Slowly breathing in as deeply as possible, really breathing in a little bit more. And when you're ready, really breathe out. While you're breathing out, drop your shoulders, drop your hands on your thighs. When you're ready, you can open your eyes and you can look around. Coming back to our present moment. So it's a very quick demonstration. How did that feel, Saijai?
I feel peace and calm.
You feel that? Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing, just a short moment, but I really do feel that. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, we literally took 3 minutes, right? Like, so I just really wanted to encourage you all to please, there are a number of strategies, a number of relaxation strategies that you can learn when you go to these Myanmar mental health issues. And also Siama Diana just put that in the chat. I really appreciate that. Another thing we could advocate our organization is about trauma-informed journalism. That's really important, training citizen journalists for that. That's important for the journalist well-being as well as community well-being, right? Like, so to be trauma-informed. And Siama, to you, like, thank you so much for your kind thoughts. And yeah.
Thank you so much.
So much, Saijai. I appreciate
And
this.
thank you all the participants who joining. But before you leave, it would be really appreciated if you could fill out 2-minute survey. It's not 2 minutes, sorry. I think it's 20-second survey. So if anybody could help us fill that out, we would be really grateful. So yeah, thank you so much, Suyama Panu.
Of course. Thank you for organizing this. It's so important for our community. And when you get the recording, I would love to share more with our community. So
yeah, thank you.
So welcome.
See you. Bye bye.
Bye, all. Please take care.